The Mafia Old Country has been out for a few days now, and having seen the reaction to it, I've been amazed. When the game was announced, I didn't add it to my must-play list. To me, titles like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Death Stranding 2, and Ghost of Yotei were the games I was most excited for. Having played all three of the previous Mafia entries, I assumed that it would be on par with those games, scoring the usual 7 out of 10. I never expected it to set the gaming world alight or push new boundaries, and that's exactly what we got. A decent game, but not a Game of the Year contender. Yet what shocked me the most is the reaction from those that are criticizing the game. Prior to the game's release, the developers announced that the game would be a 10-hour linear adventure, similar to previous entries. Yet, many people were shocked that it wasn't open world, declaring that they wanted Mafia 3 again, despite that game receiving a negative reception. The whole thing has made my head spin, and essentially it's turned into an online war of opinions. On one hand, some are declaring this is one of the greatest games ever made, whereas the other side are stating that it's an insult to gaming, modern day thievery, and an example of lazy development. The truth is, it's neither of those two things and lands somewhere in the middle. But the question is, why has there been this reaction? Why are people so shocked about the game's length? And what's the obsession with the swimming mechanics? Well, in this video, I plan to answer all those questions, so without dragging on, let's get into it. And as always, if you are new here, please consider subscribing. So in order to get an understanding of Mafia The Old Country, we need to quickly examine the series' previous entries. Released in 2002, Mafia 1 was set in the 1930s in the city of Lost Heaven. The game featured 20 missions, and despite the open world backdrop, Mafia was a largely linear story-driven action game. Strictly single player, the story would propel you from mission to mission. There was no option to leave the set structure, and the game was very much on rails, with the city being used more as a movie set to tell a story. The game had a free mode option where players could drive around freely later, but the world was largely empty. 2010's Mafia 2 followed the same blueprint overall, although they did offer a little bit more freedom in between some missions. But overall, these games were not known for having outstanding exploration, instead allowing the main story to steal the spotlight. After Mafia 2's release, we began seeing open worlds pop up everywhere, from Skyrim to Batman Arkham City, Far Cry 3, Assassin's Creed's Black Flag, GTA 5, Red Dead Redemption, among many others. The gaming industry had shifted, with classic linear games losing popularity as open world games became the main attraction. 2016's Mafia 3 marked a big departure for the series, swapping the tight story-driven structure of the first two games for a fully open world set in New Bordeaux. Unlike Mafia 1 and 2, which were mainly linear experiences, Mafia 3 gave players complete freedom to explore, adding side activities, collectibles, and territory control missions. Now on paper, it sounded like a natural evolution, but in practice, the huge map was padded with repetitive objectives and copy-paste side missions. This stretched out the pacing, diluted the emotional impact of the main story, and left players feeling like the game was big just for the sake of being big. As a result, critics and fans called it unfocused when compared to the more streamlined Mafia experiences that came before. In the end, Mafia 3 would receive the lowest score in the series. Now, I've done another video on this subject here, but essentially there are two types of open world games. Ones with fully fleshed out worlds with tons of unique experiences, e.g. Skyrim or Witcher 3, Elden Ring, and those that just fill their maps with repetitive copy-paste objectives in order to pad out the game, so like a Far Cry or Assassin's Creed game. One justifies having an open world, and another feels artificial and bloated. Unfortunately, Mafia 3 fell into the latter category. This is very important to explain because Hangar 13, the studio behind the Mafia games, realized at this point that they just couldn't do open worlds justice. This is okay, by the way. They accepted this just wasn't their strong point, and it didn't match the previous Mafia setup. At this point, they would switch back to the model of old when they released Mafia The Old Country, which was set up exactly like Mafia 1, in that it had a main story, kept players moving from mission to mission with no time for exploration in between. Like the first, there was a free roam mode available, but they went back to the original formula that worked before. Now, ask yourself this question. Should a game be open world for the sake of it? If a studio cannot make an open world worth exploring, should they still make it? Right now, the game is a solid 7.5 out of 10. If they made it so that it was open world and filled it with copy-paste activities like those seen in Mafia 3, would that increase the score or decrease the score? See, for me, I think it would have done more harm. The issues from Mafia 3 would have resurfaced and diluted the strong storytelling. To me, this shows maturity from a studio. They learned their lessons from Mafia 3 and decided to not repeat those mistakes. What's the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different outcome. Mafia 3 is loved by some, but overall it was heavily criticized for having a bloated, boring open world and veering away from the original formula that made the first two games successful. It's clear the studio wanted to focus on the series' strengths and avoid another repeat of Mafia 3. For me, I can respect that. The fact that they actually lowered the game price and announced in advance that the game would be a 10-hour linear story-based game, I can respect that too. Not every game has to be open world, and I'd rather they didn't do it if it's just going to be filled with repetitive content. Linear games are still a thing, and games like God of War have adopted a semi-open world structure to huge success. Now, if Mafia 3 had an open world that had rivaled GTA or Witcher 3, then I would understand the complaints. But the thing is, Mafia 3 had a poor open world, and that's most likely what we would have got in this game. In the end, Mafia The Old Country proves that sometimes less really is more, because a tight, well-crafted 10-hour story will always outshine a bloated open world with nothing to see. And some people much prefer a shorter linear game. They have full-time jobs, families, and responsibilities. They can't always dedicate 100 hours to each new game, especially not if every game is designed like that. Gaming needs both options. Now, I want to talk about the reaction to this game. Some have called it slop. Some say it's lazy development and a money grab. Of course, we've seen videos surfacing online showing that you can't swim in the game compared to other games. Basically, people are saying the game is far from a masterpiece. Now, I've played the game from start to finish, and I can confirm this is no 10 out of 10. There are issues with gameplay mechanics, particularly repetitive knife fights, clunky stealth mechanics, and simplistic combat. What I'm saying is that this game is far from perfect, but for what it is, for what it's trying to be, it succeeds at that. Its 76 score is accurate. It's not the best game ever made, but it's not the worst game either. Let's talk about comparisons for a moment. A lot of the frustration comes from judging Mafia The Old Country against the absolute greats. Red Dead Redemption 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, Witcher 3, games that set the bar at 10 out of 10 and redefined the industry. Now, compared to those masterpieces, of course Mafia The Old Country falls short, and that criticism is fair, but those games aren't the standard. They're the exceptions. We get hundreds of new releases each year. There's no way that they can all have Witcher 3 level writing, open worlds like Elden Ring, and hundreds of hours of flawless content like Red Dead Redemption 2. If they did, we'd never keep up. It's like my own 100 plus videos I've made. Some are great, some are terrible, most are somewhere in the middle. Every year we get a few standout titles, and some disasters. Looking at you, Gollum, and plenty of solid, enjoyable 7 out of 10 experiences like Mafia The Old Country. The issue is that some people are scoring it as if every game should match those rare masterpieces, and that's just not a fair benchmark. Now, the other thing I wanted to discuss is people's general shock that the game isn't up to the levels of those great games. When I saw the infamous video of Mafia swimming issues, it reminded me of those little details in Red Dead Redemption 2 clips, where it shows how animal corpses decay, how NPCs eat food off of plates, and how quickly people's skin can singe on fire. Now that's details. But I think we need to remember Rockstar are in a league of their own with this stuff. They raised the bar. GTA 6 is coming out next year, and everybody already expects it to win Game of the Year and be a flawless masterpiece. Why? because Red Dead Redemption 2, GTA 5, and every other Rockstar game before those was absolutely outstanding. Rockstar are known for not just making incredible games, but games that literally raise expectations on what is possible. Red Dead Redemption 2 is 7 years old and is still a better game than many games of today. But Rockstar has a track record of dropping brilliant titles. That's their MO. Mafia doesn't share that same reputation. They've always delivered semi-open world, story-driven narrative games that score okay. All of them are almost identical in design and general score. This game hasn't suddenly made the series incredible, nor has it ruined it. It's kept to the tradition. Its shooting mechanics aren't great, but they weren't in Mafia 2. Its driving feels a little unresponsive, but it was in Mafia 1. Its score overall isn't incredible, but it still beats Mafia 3. Overall, the game delivered exactly what was expected. I feel people were expecting too much, and had they checked the stats in previous Mafia games, they would have known what to expect. So, why is Mafia The Old Country such a hot topic, and why are so many gamers upset? Well, negativity does sell. It gets clicks. It's common on YouTube, but even newspapers have known this trick for years. Drama, negativity, it gets views. YouTube channels that only make negative videos, even about highly rated games, they get major views because people are curious. So if I titled this video, Mafia The Old Country is a decent game, would you watch it? Probably not. But if I titled it like, Mafia The Old Country is offensive, disastrous, and it ruined my life, chances are you probably watch it. It's just how we're wired, and many channels exploit that. The result is a mix. Some fair criticism of genuine issues, but also overblown negativity aimed at views. Right now, games are often met with more anger than necessary. So many new games receive so much backlash, and you'd think some of these games were unplayable, when it's often far from that. Mafia The Old Country delivered what was expected, yet some overreact, clowning it, calling it a joke, or rating it 0 out of 10. As a result, those who did enjoy the game feel forced to defend it aggressively to counter this over-the-top hate, so fans push back in the opposite extreme. It's perfect, my game of the year. It could also be the other way around, with dedicated fans declaring the game as a masterpiece, and then committed gaming fans worry about standards slipping, thinking if we allow standards to drop, games across the board will see a decline in quality. We need to aggressively combat this. This tug-of-war between extremes is common today, and neither side provides constructive feedback. Exaggerated hate doesn't help studios improve, and blind praise doesn't either. Fair, reasonable critiques are what allow developers to learn and grow. My hope is that gamers can return to a more balanced approach, giving honest feedback that actually benefits everyone. Because at the end of the day, it might not be ideal that you cannot swim in Mafia The Old Country, but is that really the main issue? Is that the one feature that if added would have elevated the game to Witcher 3 status? Most certainly not. If we cannot find a fair constructive middle ground, the feedback will fall on deaf ears. As a result, the Mafia series will never break out of that 7 out of 10 score. The overreaction to the game has happened for all the reasons that I've stated, but it highlights a much bigger problem in gaming, the infamous tug-of-war between two extremes. Avowed went through the same, and I recommend you check out my video to see what I mean. Mafia The Old Country is exactly what I and many expected. A solid, story-driven 7 out of 10 that plays to the series' strengths rather than chasing trends. After Mafia 3's poorly executed open world, Hangar 13 went back to a tighter 10-hour linear format, and honestly, I can respect that. It's not a masterpiece, and it's not a disaster. It's just a good time. The outrage from lazy development accusations to swimming mechanic means it feels overblown, especially when people compare it to industry-defining giants like The Witcher 3 or Red Dead Redemption 2. Those are rare gems, not the standard that every game can or should reach. In reality, the reaction is split into two extremes. Some saying it's unacceptable, and others overpraising it as a Game of the Year contender. The truth lies somewhere in the middle, and until we can give fair, balanced feedback instead of emotional extremes, studios won't get the kind of input that they need to improve. Now, some might say that I'm defending mediocrity or lowering standards, but again, Hangar 13 and the Mafia series were never the bar. And remember, A bad game will receive bad scores and as a result, bad sales. Gamers will always get the final say and vote with their wallets. Allowing people to enjoy some games that are not perfect will not lower the industry's standards. Saying they're perfect when they're not, or awful when they're not, that most certainly will. But anyway, that's it for this one, but what do you guys think? Do you feel that the reaction to the Mafia was justified? What were your thoughts on the game? Do you agree with my general take or disagree completely? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please give it the thumbs up, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Av Gaming, where we do video game analysis, identifying what makes great games great, and what could make good games great as well. Thanks for watching, Av out.